Welcome to the Husker247 HypeCast. I'm Brian Christopherson, joined by Michael Bruntz and our special guest from the Omaha World-Herald, Evan Bland. It's good to have you, Evan. How's the Thanksgiving cooking going? What you got in the oven right now?
Nothing just yet. We're part of the group of suckers that still have to get to the grocery store and beat that Thanksgiving Day rush. So I haven't learned much through the years on that. I can make a mean box stuffing and get a nice big juicy turkey from the local grocer. So that's kind of my limit on things.
That's disappointing. I assumed you were one of those guys that had some brisket or something different going on the grill for like 48 hours, like in advance. But so that's disheartening to hear, Evan.
I learned early in my life that with my last name, I couldn't be a chef. Nobody wants that. So I just kind of gave up on that. That was one of the first dreams of mine that died as a youth, was getting into culinary adventures. Yeah. Chef Bland. It's just trying to read the room on that one. And
all right, fair.
So that was I settled early on that one for sure.
Okay, fair enough. But we are going to trust you to talk some football. There's been a lot of talk about the rivalry this week, and if it's ratcheted up maybe a little bit because of last year. What do you think, Evan? Have you seen this thing pick up some steam? Do you expect any Nebraska State patrolmen to guard the end this year? What's on your mind with that?
Well, for sure, it ratcheted up last year. I mean, when you have local law enforcement out there guarding the Hawkeye logo at midfield at Kinnick and like shooing players through, that was a heck of a tone setter. And then obviously you had handshake gate on the other end of that thing. So I think both sides feel like they were slighted from that thing. And I mean, every game this decade has been one possession, and it's been walk-off field goals and blowing kisses. And you have Logan Jones this week in Iowa City, Iowa Center, talking about how he got a Nebraska offer the day after he committed to Iowa. And boy, is he glad that they didn't offer him. So there's some saltiness there. And I think it's fun to see how the rivalry has grown and evolved from what felt kind of forced maybe in the early 2010s, and it's become very organic. And I think it's a reminder that of one of the best parts about regional conferences that we've lost is that there are so many places where Iowa and Nebraska fans work in the same company or whatever, and the trash talk is going on year round. And like, this is the time when that kind of comes to a head. So I think it's picked up these last few years. I think Iowa continues to feel slighted for some reason, kind of the younger brother syndrome a little bit from what happened in the 90s even, and the Sean Eichhorst stuff. And Nebraska certainly is fed up with Iowa, which has kind of been a corn kernel in its shoe now for quite a while. So I think the emotions are high, the desire is high, and it like Dana Holgerson said this week, it does feel different than a lot of other games Nebraska plays.
You shouldn't say this at Thanksgiving, but I think it's okay to have a little hatred in your heart when it comes to football. Toward the other side, and then channel it, but I don't mind it. All right, let's dig into the game a little bit. Talk Husker offense first, Bruntz. Honestly, like, it was funny, like in July, August, there were these reports out of Iowa City about how their defense could be the thing that maybe holds them back a little bit this year. And here they are. They're number 8 in total defense, number 9 in yards per play. Let's bring it to TJ Lateef as he goes against that defense. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the biggest thing he's got to do in this game? I can give you the old radio guy question, and you can pick one. Like, is it the arms, the legs, or the brain that has to be the top thing? You can only pick one, too.
Yeah. Well, it's only one thing's going to work. So, no, it's a fair radio guy question. I think TJ just has to be efficient. So I guess is that the brain? Is that what column that falls into? I was going to disguise coverages. They're going to be fundamentally sound. I mean, they're going to be everything that Iowa defenses have been since the dawn of time. Like, there's no surprise there. And, Nebraska is going to have to be comfortable. Like, this is a game that's going to be played more on Iowa's terms. Like it always is, that they just kind of get you down in the mud and wrestle you for 4 quarters. And Nebraska, I think, at least this version of Nebraska football has gotten a little bit more comfortable with doing that. But I think offensively, Nebraska is going to have to be patient. They're going to have to lean on Emmett Johnson. And, you're just going to have to kind of avoid that catastrophic mistake that, for the most part, Nebraska has avoided with TJ Lateef. I mean, he hasn't had just that back-breaking interception or that just mind-numbing turnover that's taken place in his starts so far. So, you'd also love to have an explosive play or two from him, whether that's with his feet or I think it's going to have to be something a little bit more off schedule. I mean, I just think for him, you're either going to have to make a play where nobody's expecting you to, or if Nebraska is able to scheme somebody open like they were last year with Isaiah Nair, you got to hit that throw.
Mm-hmm.
Like these games with Iowa are like 3 to 5 plays basically decide the whole thing half the time. And you need to be able to take advantage of those. So give me some efficiency with a sprinkle of a big play or two. And I think that's a good recipe for a freshman quarterback.
Okay, Evan, I haven't looked at have you guys seen, what's the win going to be Friday? Is that anybody got their AMS seal of approval? I'm curious what that's going to be like, but regardless, it's going to be a heavy dose of Emmett Johnson. We know, he's not a Doak Walker finalist and all that, but he could still cement first team all conference, Big Ten awards. What are you looking for, Evan, just from Emmett, from a touches standpoint, and also the sort of yardage output they're going to need from him to win a game like this?
Yeah, I mean, he's proven that he can handle a big workload. I would expect 25 to 30 touches, whether that's handoffs or in the pass game, short yardage stuff. He gets stronger as the game goes on. Nebraska against Iowa, they really haven't had a dominant back in a lot of these recent years. They kind of have had to piecemeal it together a little bit or rely a little too heavily maybe on the quarterback run game. But I expect them to feed Emmett quite a bit. One of his superpowers is missing guys in short spaces, tight spaces, and that's how you're going to have to beat Iowa. You can't rely on missed assignments or really even missed tackles. It's going to have to be Nebraska and guys like Emmett Johnson making the play to earn those yards, because they're just not going to be given. They don't commit a lot of penalties on the other side either. So, I mean, you just kind of look through the lineup and you say, who do you feel like you can rely on in these kind of situations? I think Emmett Johnson's clearly at the top of that list. And then you factor in some of the struggles the defense has had stopping the run. This is a game, I think, if you're Nebraska, where you want to try to limit the exposure that your defense has. So it is not in Nebraska's best interest to put together a lot of short, quick drives, whether those are even scoring drives or not. You want to put some longer possessions together, limit those chances that Iowa gets, just because of some of the limitations I think that you're going through in terms of Nebraska and its own front seven.
We don't always throw special teams right in between offense and defense, but it feels like it's warranted this week. Bruntz, their punt returner, Caden Wetjen, he won them the Michigan State game in many ways. Michigan State decided to go basically the 2014 version of Iowa, when they kicked at Pearson L twice, and they kept kicking it at him. How much of a worry is that guy alone in how he can impact this game, having watched what he's done throughout this season?
Yeah, no, I mean, that Michigan State game, I don't know what they were thinking. It was just like a comedy of errors, and let's kind of put the exclamation point on this by kicking directly to this great punt returner. Nebraska's going to have to be dialed in on special teams. I mean, the one thing you can say for this version of Nebraska is that the special teams have won them games this year. I think Mike Eckler is a great special teams coach, and he's going to have a good plan in this one about how they kind of handle that. And, you got a freshman punter who's kicked well, but you just need to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page. The punt is going where it's supposed to. If it goes 10 rows into the stands, I think that's okay in this game, as long as it's 40 yards down the field and not off the side of the foot or something like that. So this at least this year feels like the first time in a long time where you could say that Nebraska might actually be able to, stand in the middle of the ring and trade some punches with Iowa's special teams units, where before it was just like, hold on and hope that, nothing catastrophic happens. And I mean, you saw last year where, of course, it found a Nebraska player and Iowa was in business after the punt was touched. So I think you just avoid him and at least have a good plan. I mean, I don't think you want to punting to him and kind of allow what Michigan State did with that game-changing play that gets things going.
Yeah, how guys honestly field punts in the possible conditions. We'll see what it is, and also how guys can get away their punts. I know that was a rude awakening for Archie Wilson the one game with like the 30-mile-an-hour winds here, mid-season. But he's learning how to punt in these conditions, so that'll be an interesting part of it. As we go to the defense of side of the ball for Nebraska, Evan. Obviously the run defense was it's been the topic of the season, but especially this week after what Penn State did. Do you connect with what Penn State did with Iowa? Like, do you see them as similar in that way and in their style, or do you think this is a different animal? What's your feeling about Nebraska's run defense trying to get off the mat from that game and take whatever lessons or missed assignments they had and apply it toward this Friday?
Yeah, Matt Rule on Monday said that the Iowa offense was very different than Penn State. And I think schematically that's true. But the greater concern to me, if you're Nebraska, is the ethos of that attack, which is clearly they're going to run the ball a lot. The other thing that you don't really connect with Iowa on in terms of their past is they actually have a mobile quarterback in Mark Gronowski. That's not something that you could say about that team in really more than a decade. So not only is Nebraska now going up against another physical front, you've got a guy in Logan Jones who's an Outland Trophy finalist, and just older blockers across the board on the front side. But now you also do have to account for that quarterback mobility piece, which they never have really figured out consistently this year. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be the physical challenge of being able to hold up and get off blocks. You can bet Iowa's going to be attacking outside the hashes the way that Penn State just did, and see if Nebraska can hang there. But it's also then going to be the mental challenge of you're going to have, unlike the Penn State game, you almost have to wait an extra beat or two to make sure that Gronowski either handed the ball off or decided to keep it. So I think it's almost more complicated this time just because there are so many different ways that Iowa can beat you. I do think this game will have a lot of say in maybe how Nebraska approaches the offseason with this. There was some good stuff from John Butler, the DC, on Tuesday about how you fix that thing long term. And I think this is a game where you can put a lot of stock in the idea of, is your main priority to invest in the youth that you have, the Cade Petshocks, the Keona Davises, the Riley Van Poppels, or is this a game that really underscores Nebraska needs to go out and get a big body difference maker in the trenches moving forward? So I think it's fascinating how that matchup plays out in terms of the result of Friday's game, but also how Nebraska approaches that roster reconstruction in the offseason.
Yeah. I'm interested too in if this defense, the red zone defense came up the other day too, and Nebraska has not allowed teams into the red zone like a ton, 27 times, but teams have scored touchdowns 20 times. And it feels like this is a game where this defense has to buck the trend. And when they give up, let's say they do give up a 35-yard run, and hope ideally for them, it's not a 65-yard touchdown, but that you keep it in the yard. Can they be that group that responds and doesn't let that bleed into the second, third, fourth bad play, which I think has happened a few times, like a USC game comes to mind, where they had like the 6 bad play stretch. So that's going to be key, is getting yourself right immediately if you give up that one play. Bruntz, let's swing it to like a wild card or X factor. Is there something that comes to your mind that could shift it? Maybe people are talking about it, maybe they aren't.
I don't know. I think, we've obviously talked about it, but the special teams piece of it seems at least significant in this one because, for years, everybody's pointed to Iowa's advantage on special teams in games like this, and how it almost felt like inevitable that there was going to be some play that Iowa was going to make that was going to swing the tide. And when you kind of start going back through the final scores for these games that Nebraska's lost, I mean, it's 3 points here, 3 points there. It's a touchdown loss. A large part of that has been either a big special teams play, Iowa dominating average starting field position and kind of playing, to the wind and the conditions in November, and winning that way. And even though we maybe haven't seen it the last couple games, I do think Nebraska has the ability to either make a big play in special teams or kind of go toe-to-toe with Iowa in kind of its own game. I mean, if there's wind, and it looks like 14 miles per hour is what's being predicted right now on Friday. I don't have my seal of approval, but I do think that Nebraska this year has shown that they're able to and willing to be patient and play that kind of game too. So I think that's an X factor, at least in Nebraska's favor in this one, is that it just doesn't seem like such a boat anchor they're dragging around like maybe it has been in years past.
Do you have anything, Evan, that you would say is like an X factor, a wild card? Maybe it's a player, maybe it's someone who was a little under the radar that you think could pop up and factor in.
I'm going to throw a stat out there. I think it's going to be Nebraska's ability to convert on third down. And I went back and looked through some of their success. They've actually been pretty good at converting on third down this year. And if they can hit that 50% mark, they've won 5 of 6 games. The exception was Penn State last week. And conversely, when Iowa allows an opponent to hit 50 yards on third down conversions, they've lost both of those games. So I think that's a big key. You don't want to get to fourth down against Iowa for both sides of it. Nebraska's been poor converting fourth downs, and Iowa's been maybe the best in the country at it. So you really don't want to get into that realm. But I think that those third down moments, whether it's a little completion that Latif can have to somebody, or if Emmett Johnson can squeeze out that extra yard, that's just really key in keeping those drives going. Kind of like I said earlier, I don't think you want to overexpose your defense in this game just because of how Iowa goes about its business. So that to me is really key. If you're having quick possessions and you're turning that thing back over, Iowa can be like an anaconda. It's going to slowly kind of wrap itself around you, and pretty soon you're suffocating just because of how they do their thing. So that's one thing I'll be watching, is if they can extend drives, especially on those money downs.
All right. Pick to click. Let's do some predictions, and we'll start with picks to click. One player that you think could have a big impact in the game. I'll start. I'll say Isaiah Hunter. I could see one of those screens. It was his only completion catch last week. I think he got about 20 yards on it. But those have been good for Nebraska, and I could see him making an explosive play or two in this kind of game. Maybe the kind of explosive Bruntz was talking about earlier that the Huskers literally let slip through their hands. So I'll say Isaiah Hunter. How about you, Evan?
I'm going to go Deshaun Singleton. I think he's come on strong here late in the year, a couple double-digit tackle efforts the last 2 weeks. And he's the kind of hybrid player that's, I think, especially important in a game like this, where he's going to be able to come down and be physical in the box and probably have to make some plays outside the hashes with the zone run scheme that Iowa has. But then occasionally he's going to have to be disciplined enough to drop back when Iowa does execute a run fake and throw the ball downfield. So I think he's someone who has really benefited from this extra season through the junior college eligibility. He's gotten better late in the year. I think he's playing his way into NFL consideration, and this will be a game where he can really show that experience against an Iowa team that really makes you think with its schemes.
Bruntz?
I'm going to go Emmett Johnson. I think he's got to have a good game if Nebraska's going to pull this one out. He went over 100 yards last week at Penn State. It was a little bit of a misnomer there. I mean, 52 yards on one carry, but it was kind of quiet the rest of the way. So I think for him, it needs to be one of those games where he's still kind of in there dashing and darting in the fourth quarter, and making guys miss in order for Nebraska to have a chance here. And I think they're going to have to lean on him a lot in this one. So I'll go Emmett Johnson.
All right, let's do some oddly specific predictions. I don't know if you guys have yours, so I'll give you like a minute, and I'll pick one. I think Iowa is going to get a safety in this game. That makes it 2-0 at one point, because I just feel like that's an Iowa type game. I think they've already done that this year, at least once, if not twice. So they nail Nebraska deep. Something bad happens in the end zone. Latif maybe has to fall on a fumble or something. So it's 2-0 Iowa off the bat. I'm kind of going to give away my score prediction a little, though. I think Nebraska is going to score a dramatic touchdown in the final 2 minutes of this game. That includes a fourth down conversion to keep the drive alive. So that's my call. What have you got, Evan?
I think that TJ Latif is going to run the football before Emmett Johnson does in this game. I think it's going to be a callback to the UCLA game that loosened things up for him and maybe forced UCLA to adjust its defense. I think almost maybe even kind of like a superstition sort of thing where Nebraska says, that rabbit's foot worked the last time. We're going to go back to that again. I think he's going to pull that first one, run it, have gain 5 or 6 maybe, and that'll set a tone. And I think it's a tone they're going to have to set throughout the game. I don't think that you just want to do it on the first play, because you need Iowa to be concerned about some of these different things. So I think they'll be more intentional about it, but I think TJ Latif takes a carry before Emmett Johnson does.
All right. What do you got it, Bruntz?
I think it's Iowa, Nebraska. We're talking punts here. I think we're going to see 11 combined punts between the two teams in this matchup.
Only 11?
Yeah, but
okay.
I think 11's the number. It's here. I can just see it. 11 punts is the number. I think Iowa is actually going to punt more than Nebraska in this game. So I'm going to say a 6-5 advantage in punts for Iowa, just slightly. But 11 total punts. It's going to be a low scoring game, I think. So I think you're going to get those guys over in the stands again with the punt sweatshirts on. It's a Thanksgiving tradition, much like Chef Bland's box stuffing.
Do you think Iowa actually would wear it as a badge of honor that they punted more? They just expect it as it's kind of like an offensive play for them.
You get like a Letterman's jacket at Iowa, and it's got like a band on it for when you punted more than 10 times in a game.
All right, let's close it down here. Score prediction. How do you see it playing out? Let's go to our guest first, Evan Bland.
I hate to be a wet blanket on a HypeCast, but my official prediction is 24-17 Iowa. I just think what we saw last week at Penn State, I wonder how much can change in terms of the physicality up front. That's an area that Iowa was going to hammer anyway. I think they'll do it do it now. Every game comes down to the fourth quarter or final possession, and Iowa's got decades of institutional knowledge to fall back on, whereas Nebraska's still in essentially its first year with 3 different coordinators. So I think that plays a part as well, and I think it'll be another close finish, but ultimately one that's maybe a little too familiar for Nebraska fans.
I think it's an understandable wet blanket. I mean, they've won 9 of the last 10. 6.5 was a spread last I saw at the time of this HypeCast, and it went up from the opening line. What do you say, Bruntz?
I'll join Evan in the wet blanket club. I think it's Iowa 17, Nebraska 14. I just think it's going to be one of those typical games. I don't know if it's going to be a walk-off, but it's not going to be not going to the Nebraska's inability to stop the run is concerning. That should be a concern. It's been a concern all season. It'll be a concern on Friday. So I think 17-14 Iowa over Nebraska. Sorry.
If it's a walk-off, heaven help us. So 4 basically walk-offs since 2018. I don't know how Husker fans will deal with that. I'll be the voice of encouragement here. I'll say Nebraska 20-19 in dramatic fashion.
Wow.
Some of this is, I think this game will go down to the final 2 minutes. It always does. And I actually think Nebraska plays up to Iowa a lot of times. Like there's been years where it felt like Iowa was, the favorite and Nebraska was right there, even in the Frost era. And so I'll take the Huskers to win it. And I had 8-4 as my season prediction too. So there's a little bit of like, I got to hit that one. And so I'll say Husker win. So that's what I have. And Evan Bland, everybody can read you at the World-Herald, right? That's where to find you. You guys do a lot of good podcasts and good stuff. Just tell the folks where they can find you.
Yep. Yeah. Omaha.com, the World-Herald. And lots going on every week. Hopefully people can find us. I do want to say, Brian, I appreciate your prediction, including the Iowa safety into that. If they had the 17 and then the +2 for the 19. So that's some next level prediction there. You're bringing it all together.
I actually thought it all through where, they were going to have, they'd get to 19 and then Nebraska will score and go for 2 and not get it. 2019 score there. So that's where that comes, the math comes in. But thanks for being on the show, Evan. And we look forward to this Black Friday game. And thanks to everybody for watching the HypeCast, and come to Husker247.com for all the latest.